As a Christian working woman, you have many roles, from your responsibility with family and friends to community and work. How do you connect all that you do with all that you are and still have your faith shine through? It's a challenge, but you are up to it. The She Works for Him podcast is the gathering place to empower Christian working women to live out their calling at work by connecting them to God, resources, and each other through powerful faith stories from other working sisters in Christ. Welcome to She Works for Him.
Welcome to She Works for Him. We are your hosts, Nadya Dickson and Martha Brangenberg. Today, we are very excited that you are here with us. And I just want to remind you that you can go to our YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, our website, iworkforhim.com/SheWorksForHim, or just SheWorksForHim.com can get you there. And stay connected to us. We would love to hear from you. If you have something that you want to ask us about, you can always comment on our posts right on social media or send us a message. We really try hard to respond to those so that we're meeting the needs of you, the Christian working woman, because our heart's desire is to connect you to God, resources, and one another. And today is going to be a little bit different. Nadya and I are just going to kind of have a conversation with each other. It's as though we're maybe sitting in a coffee shop somewhere and just really digging a little bit deeper than maybe your average conversation might be. But to, think of it maybe in terms of like sitting with your accountability partner and saying, I want to know more. I want to hear the answers to some hard questions. And we're hoping that these are questions that maybe you're asking yourself or wishing someone was asking you. So maybe what we have to say today will challenge you to be thinking about those answers as well. So Nadya, thank you for joining me for this kind of casual little time together on She Works for Him so that we can just get inside of each other's hearts a little bit more. And I would love to start with this because we've shared a little of your testimony on previous shows, and we know that you are leading the master's program for women. But your background has a lot of different facets of church in it. And even a couple of weeks ago, we got to hear from your very own pastor, Bishop Larry Jackson, and his heart for women and God's perspective on that. But I want to hear what kind of preparation you've had over the years from your own local church that maybe, that created some obstacles or helped launch you in seeing who you were or are as an equipped Christian working woman.
Wow, that's such a deep question.
It is. We're just going to go right there.
Let me take a drink of my coffee. Well, Martha, when I think back, I was I was 18 when I got saved. And so when I was introduced to Jesus, when I finally found a church that felt like a family to me, because none of my family members at the time were serving the Lord, it was an old-fashioned church, and the people were loving. And they encouraged me to become more educated in the things of God and to enlist in the Lord's army, sort of thing. So at that time, it was Christian education. I'm becoming a Christian educator. So I did go through different, certifications and trainings at the church, but it really was to, the opportunities were like Sunday school and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't feel a real a pull or an encouragement to seek, a higher calling outside the walls of the church even. Until a spiritual mother came into my life. And she was not part of the ministry team or the staff or anything like that. She was actually an intercessor in the church. And she was very spiritually in tuned. And because of her, I ended up going to a Bible college in the United States because she said, I just sense that you have a call on your life. And she saw past all of the mess that you come into your Christian life with as a young, undiscipled person, and just saw, a love that I had for God. And she just breathed into that. And she saw the need I had for a spiritual mother. And so because of her, really, it set me on a path to think higher and to believe that maybe God had something more to do in my life. And she was a business owner. And so because she hired me and I ended up working for her in administration, I was mentored and discipled by her in my early life for what I needed at the time as a young, 18 going on to like 30, And so that played a big part of it. As I started to learn more about, discipleship and understanding the Lord and his ways and his call, I would seek a church that would have more, that would validate me, not just as somebody to keep the pew warm or to pay a tithe only, or to work in the bookstore or whatever. I really looked for a place that was going to acknowledge and equip that the fivefold office is to build up the church for the work of the ministry. And so there were various places that I went that I kept seeing the Lord saying, okay, this season is great and you've grown and now we're moving on. And it was always a difficult thing for me to do because I have I've got this loyalty thing going on. And you create, soul ties and attachments. But the Lord is like, yep, but this is a season and I'm moving you to another place. You're going to another pot to grow. You're root bound here. You're root bound. So you've got to be in a larger place to flourish and grow. And I just followed him each time, not necessarily detaching from the people that I had known and grow to love. And even in fact, the most recent church transition we made, which is to Bishop Jackson's church, we still have a lot of fellowship with our previous small group. And this is probably the place where I've seen the most encouragement and unleashing of women in leadership in the marketplace and in the ministry space that I've ever experienced. And so it's a timely thing. God is faithful. He knows where we can grow and flourish. We just have to press in and believe and trust him.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because, as I've gotten to meet your pastor, Bishop Larry Jackson, I'm the kind of person, and my husband would be like, man, I wish we could live there so we could go to his church. Well, you can't always do that, right? So talk briefly to us about what does it look like when in your own, where you having that discontent, when God, that this is the body that you're worshiping in, but it maybe isn't necessarily feeding you as a Christian working woman. What do you do with that?
That's really good. Well, I always tell people they have to manage their own healthcare. You have to become your own director of health and have to find out where the resources are to make sure that you have what you need, because everyone's unique. It's not a one size fits all.
I'm going to just jump in there because, that is one of the things that She Works for Him. I did not set this up, but that is one of the things that we so much desire, is to be a place where they can find what that care is going to be. And we have had the privilege of interviewing so many people that are connected to discipling organizations that can help in that journey when they're not getting it on Sunday morning. Which we don't necessarily expect it to be gotten on Sunday morning. But at the same time, to know that you're valued and that God has a place for you, and that you're not, you're not outside of His desires for your life. So when we come back, I want to talk more about that. But I just love the fact that, managing your own healthcare means sometimes looking outside and saying, what else is available to me that can help me to be a healthier daughter of the Most High God. We'll be right back. We are your hosts, Nadya Dickson and Martha Brangenberg, and you're listening to She Works for Him.
Did you know that God has a calling on your life? It's true. He's called you to bring Jesus to the world. For some, that may look like a pulpit or a foreign mission field, but for most of us, it looks like a construction site, a cubicle, a hospital, or a classroom. Wherever it is that you work, live, volunteer, and invest, that is your mission field. To learn more about integrating your faith into your work and retirement, check out our books, I Work for Him, She Works for Him, and I Retire for Him, by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore.
Welcome back to She Works for Him with your hosts, Martha Brangenberg and Nadya Dickson. Today, we are just having a little conversation with each other and really kind of taking this role of maybe accountability partner and asking some tougher questions of each other that we hope are of value to you that you maybe can ask yourself, or I don't know, maybe we'll share a little bit of insight that can help you in your journey. That's what we're here for. So Nadya, thank you for sharing from your heart, just a little bit of your journey and where that has taken you.
Yeah. And, when we ended that last segment, Martha, what I love about She Works for Him is that in my world, it's one of the most collaborative efforts to unite and unify Christian working women and the organizations that represent health and resource to these women. And so I love being a part of it. And I'm so thrilled that I was invited into this. So now I'm going to turn it back on you.
Okay.
So how do you keep sharp? You do see a lot of these resources. You're a leader in your own right. And so it's easy as a go-to person not to have a place to go when so many people are coming to you for resource and inspiration. So where do you go for you to be fed yourself?
It's such an interesting question, and one that, we were kind of joking right before we went on the air about the fact that, there's a lot of areas that we're still fall very short in. And this is one of the areas that I have had better times than others. And one of the benefits of being in the seat that we've been in as interviewees on I Work for Him and She Works for Him now is the fact that I get to hear about so many amazing resources and stories or studies or events that I can go to and be a part of. And so it's really, for the last multiple years, it's been a very high level involvement in a lot of things. And there is a part of me as a woman who really desires to have that deeper connection. So last year, I actually started a Zoom Bible study on Wednesdays. It was a time when a lot of people weren't getting together, and yet I felt like there was just such a need, and I wanted to get into the Word in a deeper way. And so for a season, I did that. And what was great about it is that I didn't want to lead it. I just was the facilitator. And so I had different people help with it. And it was we used the SOAP method, which was scripture, observation, application, and prayer. So there was no prep. Nobody could say, I didn't get my homework done. We would literally open up to the next scripture, read it, observe what the Bible had to say, hear from each other, pick each other's brains. And how can we apply this? How can we take this tomorrow or today? We don't have to wait till tomorrow, but that thought of like, what does this look like in my life tomorrow? So that's one way that I've done that. And that was just for a season. I have been looking, okay, what's that going to be for me next? My personal quiet time is important. And the more that we travel, the more I find that I need to be more disciplined about that and make like you were just saying, I need to take control of my own self-care. Like if I don't make that a priority, nobody else is making it a priority for me. So really focusing on that. So what a couple things that I've done just recently is, this whole idea of collaboration and unity is incredibly close to my heart. And our other co-host, Catherine Gates, actually was talking about the body and, like the dependence of the different parts, like physically on that, and taking that analogy. God gives us that in scripture. And so I actually tabbed I'm going to hit my mic here. I actually tabbed my Bible with a whole bunch of verses that I could find on unity and the body. And I've really been delving into those and saying, what does that really look like? Because it is my desire, not only for all the Christian working women of the world or the organizations or the faith and work movement, but within my own family, my own neighborhood, whatever that might look like, that the unity of the body shows the world who Jesus really is. And so that's something else I've been doing to just really, allow myself to be fed, partaking in a church that's feeding me well with my husband together. But I'm always checking new things and looking at it's so great when we hear about other resources. We just recently did a show with Catherine about the Women in the Marketplace, her organization, and that they have virtual Bible studies. You're involved in a virtual Bible study. I mean, there's so many things out there. And God gave me, for Strength Finders, responsibility is one of my strengths. And I feel responsible for all of you listening, And so I want you to know about the things that we learn about. This is like very authentic to me. It's not like somebody told me that that's the way I had to be.
Right.
God made me that way. And now that I can embrace it and use that in a way to help other people, I get so much energy from that.
It's so apparent that you are a spiritual mother. As I hear you talking in your heart to gather your chicks, and to get this, create an atmosphere of collaboration and unity. But I want to ask you, have you ever had a spiritual mother yourself?
Wow. I've never really identified one. I guess I have the amazing pleasure of being raised in a very solid Christian home. And my mom is, a spiritual mother to me. She has been my biggest cheerleader. She and my dad, both very involved in the ministry that we do with I Work for Him and She Works for Him, and living that out. I have had different women along the way that I've either they've inspired me or I've had a personal relationship with them. God gave me seasons of accountability partners where we truly got together and asked each other tough questions, made sure each other was on the same page. And I believe that God's given me that next generation as well, too. And right now, a lot of it is a text because that next generation is super busy with their kids and trying to, just feed them and school them or whatever they're having to do right now. And it's, just trying to keep them encouraged in what they're doing, got the call that God has on their life, and keeping them in the Word and praying for them.
That's so good. And just as, I recall some of the things we talked about with Bishop Jackson, that he played a pastoral role from his marketplace platform. A lot of our listeners today who are in the workplace could be those spiritual moms right in their workplace, not even realizing that some of the people that are under their care or colleagues would benefit from that spiritual gifting in them as an intercessor or as someone who's interested, authentically and genuinely in their lives.
It's such a great point, because we work with them every day, or, we're building those relationships, but being intentional and feeding into them and letting them know who you are. It's not even necessarily telling them they need to be doing, but just saying, this is how I struggled with that, or this is how, God showed me a new thing, and taking that responsibility really seriously, but in a natural way, because we work together. We're building relationships with those around us, no matter what our work is. That's such a great point. Nadya, when we come back, I want to just delve into some other topics with you as we just chat today together on She Works for Him. We'll be right back.
As women, we like to share our special finds with others. That new little shop we just discovered, or a favorite brand that is having a sale. Well, I have a special find for you. The Awaken Podcast Network is a collection of podcasts gathered onto a digital platform with you in mind. No more searching and wondering if the content is relevant. The work has already been done. Awaken Podcast Network even has smaller collections of podcasts focused on specific topics, including a collection called She Works for Him, dedicated to content for Christian working women. So go ahead, unlock God's purpose for your work, and check out awakenpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome back to She Works for Him with your hosts, Martha Brangenberg and Nadya Dickson. And today I'm so glad that you're here with us as we're just kind of chatting back and forth like accountability partners, asking some kind of tough questions, hoping that it's something that you've been needing somebody to ask you, or maybe you then can be challenged to ask somebody else. So we've talked about our church. We've talked about being a spiritual mother. Nadya, I would love to just talk right now a little bit about, it is really easy for our personal life, our family, our marriage to be overshadowed by our work. Our work can become an obsession. It can become a lot of things. How are you dealing with that? Has that been a struggle for you? And maybe tell us a story or something along those lines.
Well, this is so recent. So yes, it is a struggle. It has been a struggle. It was the very thing that rocked me when I first started the master's program, was that I had given such, a priority and an energy and creativity to my work life. And my family was getting the leftovers, which wasn't much. And I shouldn't say I was raised that way, but as a latchkey kid, I just felt like I was just doing the norm, that was normal. Not realizing that my family and my children, my husband, that was my first ministry. And I've seen this happen in ministry settings too. Anything can become a mistress. Anything can become a priority over your marriage. So it could be a ministry, it could be an invention, it could be a career, whatever it is. And I was very performance driven, and it was easier to metric my performance in my workspace. And it was also easier to feel underappreciated or undervalued in my own home. And so I would always gravitate to where the rewards were,
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I understood biblically my role as a wife and a mother, and how my children did need me. It seemed like they didn't need me, or that they didn't want, of course they didn't want the discipline and all of that.
Sure.
But, and I really had to pray. I said, Lord, I feel really confident when I go to work. I do not feel confident as a mom and as someone who can be, what my sons need. And so he had to really show me what that was. And so through the word, and again, through peer group and accountability partners and other people that I aspired to be like, watching their lives, and that it wasn't just a dream. It's a reality. People walk in that kind of life mastery. I learned those things. But just most recently, my husband and I went away. Actually, we were in Fort Lauderdale. I was so close to you guys. And we were very intentional about looking at 2022, looking at our calendars. And the first things we penciled in were each other. And everything else fell around that. So it wasn't like we're going to give each other leftovers. We were like, nope, we're going to schedule our time together, and we're going to schedule family time together. And then everything else will work around that. So we did that intentionally, because my husband was telling me in December, I was doing a lot of traveling for my work. He said, I miss you, and I'm important. And that broke my heart, because I got lost in everything that I was doing. So it's fresh.
You said such a good thing about giving the leftovers, because we don't think about it that way, intentionally giving our family our leftovers. But what do we do at the end of the day? You've held it together all day. You've had a great experience or a bad day, either way. But you come home, and you take it out on them, or you don't put the energy into those relationships, which are the most important. What a great example that you actually took the time to pencil that in. Now, hopefully it's pen. I know life happens, but I know what you meant. Making yourselves a priority. There was a time in our life where Jim and I, this was back when we were not hardly watching any TV, but we had one show we really liked, and we actually put it on our calendar to sit on the couch together. That sounds crazy, but we never did it. And it just kind of filled us up in a different way. It was like something to look forward to on Thursday nights. Remember back when Thursday night TV was the night? And so it was just one way of saying, you know what, I just want to spend time with you. Get the kids to bed early. They can't come out of their rooms. They were told, this is just mom and dad time. And it was really important. So we're a couple months into the new year, and I hope that if this, it's never too late to make a new start. And getting that little glimpse into an idea, even if you're just now hearing this, it's the end of February, it's not too late. We still have 10 months left of the year, and the rest of your life. How are we going to make those things a priority. So, I just want to put a little plug. We recently on I Work for Him interviewed Jordan Rayner with his new book, Redeeming Your Time. And biblical perspective that is making me do a reset. It's making Jim and I together look at a lot of things and say, are we doing it God's way? Because the world convinces us of otherwise. We always go back to Romans 12:2. It's so easy to be conformed by the ways of the world, but let our lives be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And that is something that we can think of every day, but sometimes you need a reset. And so I just want to throw that resource out there. It's not just for women, it's for men and women, but it's digging into the word and saying, how does God really want us to do it? And that's really our focus for 2022. So I am so grateful that we had a little bit of time together to just kind of talk through some tougher questions. And listeners, I hope that you feel like we've just been having this conversation with you as well. We care about you. We want to give you things that you can ponder and pray over and share with other women that you're walking alongside and encourage you, because God has a call on your life. And it's never too late to make changes when we know we're falling short and struggling in an area, to say, you know what, God, His mercies are new every morning. Great is His faithfulness. Thanks for listening to She Works for Him with your co-hosts Nadya Dickson and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christian working women helping other Christian working women to say she works for Him.
As Christian women, we have many roles. From daughter, sister, friend, wife, and mother to analyst, accountant, executive, or educator. Is it possible to balance our roles at work and home in a way that honors God? The answer is yes, and our new book, She Works for Him, will help show you how. Written to celebrate, encourage, and equip women in the workforce, She Works for Him discusses the diverse experiences of today's Christian working woman. Pick up a copy by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore. You've been listening to the She Works for Him podcast with your hosts, Catherine Gates, Nadya Dickson, and Martha Brangenberg. Please like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube under She Works for Him. And to access any of the resources we mentioned on today's show, see the show notes at sheworksforhim.com. That's sheworks4him.com. This podcast was created to empower you to live out your calling at work so the world knows she works for Him.